From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
And we're back. We're going to talk about something semi-apocalyptic, endlessly fascinating, and maybe a little naughty, or even maybe a little puritanical, honestly. We're talking about the birds and the bees. And folks, younger conspiracy realists in the crowd, if this is not for you, or parents in the crowd, if this is not for your kids, go ahead and fast forward about 15, 20 minutes, because we're going to get a little bit graphic here. So I mentioned at the top of the show that nature may be giving human civilization signals that not everything is 5 by 5. One of the, to say the least, it has been for a while. Yes, we get it. But so there are these birds. They're called California condors. They kind of look like a bird version of Cruella de Vil. That's probably a good way to put it. I'm just going to throw this in the chat so you guys can check this out as a reference.
They've got a vulture-like quality to them, in my mind's eye, at least.
Mm-hmm. And they look like they're wearing an expensive coat.
Yeah, I like the fringe, but the face I could do without. It's like a weird, bald vulture kind of situation.
Yeah.
Looks like it's got leprosy.
It's something you would call a face only a mother could love. And, what about the father? Well, that opinion may be irrelevant very soon. Segue. So the California condor is critically endangered. They're big. They're big birds. We're talking like a wingspan that's just under 10 feet, like 9.8 feet, something like that, making it the widest of any North American bird. Just a rare distinction, but, get the superlatives you can. The thing about these creatures that recently came out, and scientists are obsessively trying to save these creatures from extinction in the wild, is that like the main focus when you have a critically endangered animal is to figure out what you can do to up its chances of reproduction on a large scale. Only about 500 California condors are in the U.S. or on the North American continent, in the U.S. and Mexico, and their numbers are actually going up. In the 1980s, there were less than 24 of these birds. So their family tree is not a ton of branches on the thing, is what we're saying. And recently, condors contributed a great deal of research to the solution. How do we get more condors? Especially when critically endangered, their environment is being degraded. No one knows how they can get past all the terrors of life as a modern day condor, to get some intimate time. Paul, can we get a sound cue? Yeah. To get some
bow wow.
A little shot on. Feels so good. So here's what they did. It turns out that at least 2 California condors pulled a Mother Mary and gave virgin births. They reproduced asexually. The fancy pants name for this is parthenogenesis. This is what this means is exactly what it sounds like. No pops in the picture. These birds, at least 2, so possibly more, simply decided to have a kid, and they did. And to whatever degree they could decide to do so. They're not the only animal that's capable of this. It turns out that other creatures have done this. Lizards, people have all probably heard about, like Komodo and stuff like that. Snakes, sharks, rays, fish. But other bird species can have virgin birth. The 2 kids that each of these condors had, one each, were male. One hatched in 2001, one hatched in 2009. They were entirely related to their mothers. They had no DNA from any paterfamilias in the bird world. And instantly, scientists tested all the male condors they knew would be in the breeding pool. And that's when they realized something that's even more of a plot twist. You see, typically when parthenogenesis occurs in an animal population, it's because there's literally no male there. There's no male in the breeding pool. There were dudes around here, but the virgin births occurred regardless. So cast out ideas of like why the last man, things like that. There were dudes there. This was not some kind of biologically distinct apocalypse just for the male birds. A guy who was a co-author of this study and director of conservation genetics at San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance had this statement where he underlines just how important this is. He says it's truly an amazing discovery, and he also admits we weren't looking for evidence of parthenogenesis. We just found it kind of accidentally through normal genetic studies. Unfortunately, both of those chicks, those male chicks, have passed away, and the mother condors had previous issue that was bred in the traditional way, and one of them continued to reproduce after the virgin birth. But now scientists are scratching their heads, thinking, "What does this mean? What does this mean for the dating scene for male condors?" Good question. Do your best, guys. But then also, what does this mean for the ecosystem at large? You guys have probably heard of this, right, before we went on air with it.
Not specifically. I mean, maybe I've heard the word before, but I don't think I understood that it meant. I mean, you led with the expression virgin birth, Ben. It's hard to walk back from that. Once you hear virgin birth, I'm kind of all in with that one. But that's wild, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not know this was possible. Seriously. I mean, at least from a species that has the functionality to have eggs that are fertilized by a male. I did not know they could just sometimes spontaneously fertilize themselves. That's mind-blowing to me.
Exceedingly rare, you know what I mean? Like only one person in human history is acknowledged or believed to have done that, and that's still a very controversial statement. These birds are out here lapping human civilization in that regard. It's 2 for 1. Probably a more extreme score. Just for the science of it, we know that what happens in a base level is that there is a cell in a, like you can call it biologically female or whatever, cell in that body that behaves as though it is a sperm cell and fuses with an egg. And this, again, normally only occurs in animal populations with a very small amount of breeding males or zip zilch zero breeding males. And it's, I don't know, my spidey sense goes off, you guys. It has me worried that this could be something like this could be a bad sign. If we're keeping with bird comparisons, is this a canary in a coal mine? Ooh. Why is this happening now? Is this just the first time it's been documented? Is this a harbinger or foreshadowing of other things that might come? I mean, it's at some point it would have to be dangerous for the population of condors if they rely entirely on this asexual reproduction, right? They're not remixing the gene pool, which means that there's a ticking clock on viability.
Eesh. Yeah, there really is.
Till they become the Habsburgs. Centuries later, we're still dumping on that poor guy's chin. It wasn't his decision.
Don't dump on his chin.
No, not dump. Dunk. Please, God.
So with this in mind, what I'd love to hear is I'd love to hear stories of other indications of things like this. Like, we rightly rag on Alex Jones for being an agent of disinformation and for frankly not knowing what he's talking about most of the time. Hashtag I said what I said. But he was in part right about how chemicals had affected the reproductive aspects of certain amphibians. He totally mangled the headline and was like, oh, chemicals are making the frogs gay. And that was not the case, but there was, there were deleterious effects of wild populations being exposed to these sorts of things. So what is inspiring, or what is inspiring is not the right word, what is creating these virgin births? And yeah, of course, like to an earlier point, they're not technically virgin births, but they're being called that because it's great for headlines. I'm just wondering where this leads us. I don't know, like what if this happens to more animals? The unfortunately clear answer is that if it happens to animals and it becomes the exclusive method or the primary method of reproduction, then again, they will not belong for this world in the overall sense. I don't know. And then, here, I just want to make space for a couple minutes of thought experimentation. Matt, Noel, what do you think the world would look like if human beings were capable of this? If some evolutionary switch got turned on? It won't, probably, because how chromosomes work, but...
I hope that doesn't happen. I need to have some kind of, biological need to be here personally, just for my own, for my own concept of my, I don't know, value
of
and
the
importance.
Self.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would be okay. I would be okay maybe in a world like that. But yeah, I guess you're right. There would have to be some point where people who are no longer a necessary part of the reproductive process would have to be like, how do I justify being here?
Yeah, I currently don't believe in reincarnation, so like the possibility of continuing my genetic line is one of the only things that drives me, guys.
Oh yeah, that's right. This time around, you're not
even if it's subconsciously, right? I mean,
yeah. I don't know. It's fascinating because it implies a couple things. One of the first things it implies is sort of what I, not to be too dark about it, but I call it the roach rule. The roach rule is, this is familiar with anybody who's worked in pest industries or extermination industries. If you see one roach, that means there are more. They roll deep, right? And that means that if we apply the roach rule to the California condor, in this case, or the practice of parthenogenesis, then what we can see is that there are probably more cases of this, and it's probably been going on for a longer time, and it maybe just hasn't been documented because, again, these brilliant researchers sort of stumbled across it by accident. So that's what it's indicating to me. The second thing that's indicating is that these things don't happen in a vacuum. Not generally. There's almost always some sort of environmental pressure. That is what drives evolution, right? Humans didn't start humaning because they thought it would be a fun thing to do. They did it to survive the environment of the time, whatever that time was. And that's why evolution amidst the human species continues today. That's why people are getting that weird extra vein in their forearm we talked about a while back. Mm-hmm. That's a thing. No one knows why.
It's not for us to decide. History will be the judge of what that vein is for.
History will be the judge of what that vein is for. That's our next T-shirt, folks. And let us, at this point, before we throw to a break, I would like to ask all our fellow conspiracy realists out there listening, what do you think this may mean for not just condors, but what do you think it means for the larger picture, for the macro? And what do you think the world would be like if other animals, including human animals, started exhibiting this reproductive strategy? Would love to hear your thoughts. You can hit us at our phone number, 1-833-STD-WYTK. You can email us directly where we are conspiracy@iheartradio.com. Or if you want, you can, if you don't want to share it with a group or you're dodgy about getting involved with company email stuff, you can always just hit me up directly on social media. But we're going to pause for a word from our sponsor. We're going to hope that we still have value the current species? And if so, we'll return with another piece of strange news.